Most families were one mistake away from losing everything. One missed shift, one illness, one unexpected bill, and suddenly there was no money coming in. This wasn't rare. This was normal life for ordinary British families during the hardest decades of the 20th century. There was no cushion to fall back on, no credit cards, no online banking, no emergency savings accounts. If the wage packet was short, the house felt it immediately. Homes were small, crowded, and cold. Entire families often lived in just 2 or 3 rooms. Grandparents, parents, children, all under one roof. Privacy didn't exist. Silence didn't exist. Survival did. Heating was limited to a single coal fire, usually in the front room. That room became everything: cooking space, living space, homework space, sleeping space. At night, children slept fully clothed, socks pulled high, coats folded at the foot of the bed. Frost sometimes formed on the inside of windows. Winter wasn't just uncomfortable, it was dangerous. Coal was rationed, expensive, and carefully measured. Too much today meant none tomorrow. Food was treated with almost religious respect. Nothing was wasted, ever. Leftover vegetables became tomorrow's soup. Stale bread turned into pudding. Meat was stretched, diluted, padded with potatoes and gravy. Mothers planned meals with military precision. They knew exactly how many days a joint of meat had to last. Shopping lists were short, handwritten, and obeyed without exception. Children were sent to the shops with exact change and strict instructions. They were trusted because mistakes could not be afforded. There was no room for error. Clothing was not fashion, it was function. Socks were darned again and again until the fabric barely held. School uniforms were altered year after year, hems let down slowly as children grew. Shoes were passed from one sibling to the next, soles repaired, toes patched. Buying something new was rare. Buying something unnecessary was unthinkable. When something broke, it stayed broken or it was fixed at home. Fathers learned to repair anything they could: radios, kettles, bicycles, furniture. If it could be salvaged, it was. Throwing things away felt wrong. Everything had a second use, and sometimes a third. Illness was one of the greatest fears. Because if the main earner couldn't work, the income stopped instantly. There was no sick pay for many, no backup plan. Families relied on each other, on neighbors, on quiet favors and unspoken help, and neighbors mattered. Entire streets functioned like extended families. Sugar was borrowed, coal was shared. Children were watched by whoever was nearby. Doors were often left unlocked. If someone was struggling, everyone knew, and no one asked questions. Children grew up fast because they had to. They contributed to the household, not as a lesson, but as necessity. They watched younger siblings. They ran errands. They learned responsibility before they learned comfort. Entertainment was simple and shared. One television if the family was lucky, one channel, limited hours. Radio voices filled the silence in the evenings. Families played cards, told stories, listened together. Boredom wasn't feared, it was normal. There was no escape from hardship, but there was resilience. People didn't talk about stress or anxiety. They didn't complain openly. They adapted quietly. Hardship became routine. Strength became invisible. Pride meant coping without asking. This life wasn't romantic. It was exhausting. It was fragile. And it demanded constant effort just to stay afloat. But ordinary British families survived, not because life was kind, but because they were resourceful. They learned to stretch everything: money, food, patience, hope. They learned to endure uncertainty without falling apart, and that endurance shaped generations. So when people today say they were tougher back then, this is what they mean. Because ordinary families lived every day knowing that one mistake could cost them everything, and they carried on anyway.